In this video, I'll show you guys how you can transfer an image using a vinyl mask cut from a plotter or a vinyl cutter. The process I'm going to show you guys is essentially the same thing that I was doing 25 years ago. The difference is technology has caught up. It's made our job faster and more efficient. Vinyl cutters pretty much revolutionized the custom paint industry. With a vinyl cutter, you can produce intricate logos, lettering, graphics, whatever the case may be. And you can reproduce that as many times as you want. With literally a couple clicks of a mouse, I can resize it to fit a different area. They're pretty awesome. So to get started, let's go to the computer. This is the image I was supplied with for this commission. It's a very nice sunset. It was taken from a boat on a lake, and there's a couple things that I don't like about it. For one, the American flag in the foreground is waving in the wind and it's out of focus. The background is more crisp and in more focus. For my painting, I want to flip those. So I want the American flag in the foreground to be very crisp, and then the background will be slightly fuzzy and out of focus. So how do I do that? I prefer to use Photoshop anytime I need to doctor an image. In this case, I simply found another American flag that I liked better and pasted it into the image, which is very stark. It doesn't match the rest of the image at this point. That's fine in my case. I can still use this as a reference and change it as I paint. If you need to make it blend in better, you can always add just a transparent screen to make this flag more similar to the original flag. A vinyl cutter reads a vector file. So once I'm happy with the adjustments I've made to the reference image, I need to open this in another software and vectorize the image. For that, I use CorelDRAW. I'm not going to go into how you convert an image into a vector file in this video. There's a couple different ways you can do it, and that's a tutorial all by itself. Essentially, all I've done is converted this image into a line drawing. And you can kind of see the line drawings start to appear as I change the visibility of some of these layers. Beyond that, I can change the view to just a simple wireframe, and then you really get a clear view of how I essentially just traced the image in CorelDRAW. So at that point, I can remove the background image completely, and this is the vector image. From this point, literally with a couple mouse clicks, I can send this file to the plotter and it cuts the image out. The reason I chose to use a vinyl mask for this particular painting has to do with the flag. If this painting did not contain the flag, I wouldn't use a mask or a stencil at all. It would be relatively easy to render out. The flag makes it a little bit more difficult. The old school approach would be to use a piece of frisket or transfer tape, lay it on the canvas, I would draw out the flag, and then I would have to hand cut each one of those lines that I drew with a razor blade. That takes time, and we all know time is money. You'll see my plotter will cut this entire design out, including not only the flag, but the rest of the image that I traced in CorelDRAW in about 2.5 minutes. It's a huge time saver. And I'm using a larger plotter because this is for my business, but they've been making these things for years and marketing them toward the hobbyist. You can pick up a smaller vinyl cutter for a couple $100, and it is well worth the investment in my opinion. It will save you so much time. I will leave a link in the description below to a Cameo Silhouette 3 vinyl cutter. I personally have never used one of these machines, but I have a lot of friends that use them frequently, and I've heard nothing but good things about the machine. It's a 12-inch vinyl cutter, so it's a smaller in scale, but it's only about $200. If you do any kind of custom work, especially when it comes to logos or lettering, I'm telling you guys, these things are invaluable. It saves you so much time. I highly recommend investing in a vinyl cutter if you have the means. Another great thing about the Cameo Silhouette 3 is it comes with everything you need. It comes with the blades, it comes with its own software, so you don't have to purchase CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator or another program. The only other thing you'll have to purchase is the vinyl you want to use and the transfer tape that you want to use. It comes with everything else you need to get started. I will also leave links to a good vinyl paint mask and a transfer tape. Transfer tape or application tape is one of those things where you might need to try a couple different brands or styles to figure out what works best for you. I prefer the paper type. It's semi-transparent so you can still see through it, and I prefer a medium tack as opposed to a low tack or a high tack. Once the mask is cut, you simply remove or weed out the portions that you want to paint, or the portions that you want to paint first. For this particular painting, I'm going to remove portions of the mask after I've applied it to the canvas. After you've removed the portions that you plan to paint, it's time to apply the application tape or the transfer tape. Try and put this tape on as smoothly as possible. You want it to lay flat. It's not detrimental if you get a wrinkle here or there, but take your time and try to get it as flat as you possibly can. Once it's been applied, you can cut the excess from the roll, and then I use a squeegee to burnish the transfer tape down. What that does is it allows the vinyl to stick to your transfer tape so that when you remove the backing from the vinyl mask will stay on the transfer tape, making it much easier to apply. So once you have your vinyl mask ready to apply, it's time to apply it. In this case, I'm applying it to a canvas. So all you need to do is line it up however you see fit to whatever it is that you're working on. The easiest method to use when you're doing this is to use the hinge method. What that entails is to take a roll of masking tape, and I'm going to run a strip of tape all the way down the center of this mask. This works better if you actually have something solid to tape both ends to. It keeps your mask from moving around on the surface. In this case, on this easel, I don't have a really good place to tape it at the bottom where it'll keep it from moving completely, but I'll make it work. So from here, I want to apply one side at a time. The tape will keep the vinyl mask in place, so I'll pull back one end, and then I want to begin to remove the backing from the vinyl. And you want to peel this back onto itself. If you try to pull it from way out here, there's a chance you may pull the vinyl with your backing tape. The vinyl will no longer be stuck to the transfer tape. And it's moving a little bit on me. But if you just take your time, work it slowly, there's a piece of the vinyl that's trying to come up. So now I'll take a piece of tape, just a very small piece, and I'm going to tape this transfer tape to itself on that end. That allows me to cut away the backing paper from the vinyl on this side. You can use a pair of scissors or a razor blade. If you're using a razor blade, make sure you don't cut into the surface below or the surface that you're going to be painting on. There we go. So we can discard that. I'll remove this tape. Make sure I'm still kind of lined up here. And then I'm just going to begin applying this vinyl. Just with a light touch, I'm burnishing the vinyl onto the canvas. Just a little bit at a time, that way you can prevent getting air pockets and wrinkles in your vinyl. And that'll work. Now that we have one side of the vinyl mask applied, the rest, this side's not going to go anywhere, so we can remove this tape. And then you just repeat the same process on the other side. We'll remove the backing paper from the rest of the mask. Once the backing paper is removed, you can discard it, and then it's the same process. So I'll start burnishing it down little by little with my hand. Again, I'm not using a lot of pressure. I'm just lightly putting it on to keep the air bubbles or wrinkles at a minimum. And then depending on what you're working on, you may need to take a squeegee and burnish it on a little bit heavier. In this case, I'm just going to use my hand and again, lightly going over it, making sure that I have good contact. And then we can remove the transfer tape. Same process, you want to pull it back on itself so that you don't remove portions of the vinyl that you don't want removed yet. This is not sticking extremely well to the canvas. I think it's good enough. In this case, the flag is what I'm most concerned with for this painting, keeping it intact. Especially in all these little stars. If something starts to pull up, put the transfer tape back up a little bit and burnish it some more. I try to work it evenly. You'll find that coming at an angle in some cases makes it a little bit easier. To keep your design intact. Just go slow, take your time. Normally on an automotive surface or a hard surface, you can burnish this on pretty good and you don't have to worry about the vinyl peeling up with your transfer paper. Canvas, it can be a little bit challenging because the canvas itself can flex and move. I may try a squeegee. That's much better. Just peeling a little bit at a time and then pushing down these little sections. Still in the flag. This vinyl will stretch, so you don't want to get too aggressive with it. Take your time. As I mentioned before, if you're working on hard surface like an automotive surface, aluminum panel, this is a lot easier to do because the vinyl will stick to that surface better than it does this canvas. Once you've got all the transfer tape off, it's a good idea to go in and burnish this down just to make sure you don't have any paint bleed underneath. And with that, we're ready to start painting our first color. So I've mixed up some sepia, I've got it in my airbrush. The reason I chose to use sepia for this portion of the painting, which is just the ground and the trees in the background, as you can see in the reference image, it's very, very dark. Sepia is not going to be quite as dark on its own for this background color. But once I unmask the sky and begin painting those shades, it will be covering the sepia in the background for the land and the trees, which will also darken that. That's the reason behind that. So all I'm going to do right now is just establish a light layer of this background. I don't want to get too thick around this edge because I want to come back in with the airbrush freehand and make this a little bit more fuzzy and out of focus. I don't want it to be very sharp. I want it to look like the reference image. So I'm just going to spray. And this is Wicked illustration. I'm sorry, this is detail illustration. sepia. It's reduced about 1:1 with the 4011 reducer. Again, I'm just trying to establish this background. I also want to leave it a little bit lighter around that cross because it's lit up, so we'll have a little bit of a halo there. And I left some just registration marks for the darker areas in the water. They don't have to be extremely dark. It's just a road map, kind of like what I've done in videos previously. Make sure you dry your paint in between if you get it a little bit heavy. So now that I have a portion of the land and the trees established, I can now remove another portion of the mask so that I can finish the tops of the trees and then move on to the sky. So now I want to remove the sky part of the mask. So all I'm going to do is peel the sky back on itself, just like with the transfer tape. Being careful when we get close to the flag so that we don't start pulling any of the flag up. My plan is to paint the flag last. And it's that simple. You can see there's a little bit of bleed through on the vinyl, and again, that's because this is a canvas surface. I don't normally use vinyl on canvas very often. It doesn't stick, again, to a canvas like it will a metal surface or an aluminum surface or a hard board surface, clay board, something to that effect. But this is not a big deal because, again, I want this to be a little bit fuzzy and out of focus. So I'll come back in with the airbrush and some sepia and work this to look more like the actual reference image. My sky is clear. It hasn't been contaminated with any of the sepia. Once I get the trees established, I will remove the mask for the water, render some of the detail and shadowed areas in the water before I do the sky. But that's it for this video. We will take another look at this painting in a future video. I hope you guys got something out of this. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys next time.